Mixtures, passages of color here. Let's put a little red in there. This dries quite a bit faster than regular watercolor paper because it is just sitting right on top. So, and now that's going to have to dry before I can put another layer on there. But now I'm going to put the dark over here. And it's right up here. I don't want to put it right at his shoulder or I'm going to have a terrible tangent right there. So I'm going to put it up above his shoulder a little bit. A tangent is where two edges come together and you can't really tell what's supposed to be in front. I went to the... Normally when I'm painting a face, I would go right over the teeth and the eyes with the first layer. Because this particular gentleman, his teeth are so white compared to the rest of his face that I think I'm going to leave his teeth white. I can always knock them down a little bit later if I decide that it's not... I can always knock his teeth out later. Of course, that's better than saying I can always kill him later. So this looks bright, but that's okay because there's going to be lots of coats on here. I just want to get a layer underneath and leave the whites. He's got some great shiny white areas in his skin. Whenever you're picking a photo to paint of a person, try whenever you can to have it taken outside in the sunlight because you get much better lights and darks. What makes a likeness on a person is actually the shape of the shadows on their face, not their features. Never have the highlights white. I always have the highlights red or blue or red and blue. It makes it much prettier rather than just light highlights. Now we're going to put some on his beard here. He's going to look a little like an Easter egg for a little while. Poor guy, if you saw this, he'd probably die. Now I want his hat to be quite dark, so I'm actually going to paint it just like I painted the background, except I'm going to leave some whites in it. So we're going to fill it in with burnt sienna here. Being very careful of the edges. Not really. Now there's a nice white right along that brim. And I want to leave a little white kind of along that edge. I'm going to block in his arms here just real quick. And I'm going to let that background color run right into his arm because I don't want a hard edge there. And there's a little bit of skin over here, so we'll fill that in. Now the only thing that I haven't really covered up is his t-shirt, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix a little bit of a gray just between my burnt sienna and my ultramarine blue, and I'm just going to shade a little bit along the side here where his arm is, because I don't really know how much of this I want shaded. I'm not sure that I want this shirt to be absolutely white, but since I haven't decided at this point, then I'm just going to put that much on it and leave it alone. Now, there's my first coat is totally done. Now, I can paint over an area 1 or 2 times and not move it. But if you go more than that, you're going to start really lifting it off. So I have mixed up a black here, and I'm just going to kind of lay some of that black in here. I'm using a very light touch. I'm not pushing down hard on my brush, and I want to bring this all the way over to here. The lighter, the more careful, because I want to leave some of the yellow showing and some of the white showing. I'm not worried about where his beard or anything is at this point. I'm just kind of molding his face and putting the darks and lights and the hills and the valleys in. You could actually look at a face just as if it were a landscape with little hills and valleys. And I find that this gesso works really well for portraiture, but you would not want to use it like for a child, unless they had smallpox or something. And then I suppose you wouldn't probably paint a portrait.
All right. Yeah.
It works really well for anything that has a lot of texture. Flowers actually work well if it's, and I always blank at flower names. What are the crunchy little petunias?
Carnation.
Yeah, it would work really well for that. Aren't I a great botanist? You know those crunchy little flowers. But anything that has, irises don't work because even though they have lots of ridges, I tried an iris on this once and it wound up looking dead. And, which is kind of how they look in my house, but. So you do have to watch what you would use this on because it has to be something before we go to our break.
I have one question. You've got blue underneath the chin on the
This
one.
is his beard, actually.
And then on the other one, you didn't fill it in.
Oh, well, that shows you that there's no right or wrong way. But I'm actually looking at the photo now for the exactly where those lights and darks are. I wasn't that careful with my value study, if I remember correctly. No, I really wasn't. I mean, I kind of, flapped it in there, but I just kind of have some big shapes in there. I have it better on his face, but I must have got tired down here. So I really am looking at the shapes that are on the photo at this point. And I'll put a little on his arms. There's a light spot right there, which I like. Whoops. I'm going to let some of that color bleed right into his arm. I can take it off later if it gets too...
Oh, okay.
That was totally an accident, but it looks kind of cool. Of course, now I need it down here. So we'll throw some down there.
Can you push the painting up a little bit?
Yep.
Good. That's fine.
This just flooded in there, and it looks kind of cool, so I think I'll leave it. I can always wipe it off later if I don't like it. But we should probably make the other arm look about the same.
Do you ever get a point where you can't wipe it off?
No, because it'll always come off of the gesso parts. It won't come out of the holes. So like if I were to put another layer on this part, with each layer that I put on, these holes will get darker and darker and darker. So if I want this to remain looking light, I don't want to put a bunch more coats on it or it's going to have dark polka dots on it. So that's really the only way you can get into trouble is if you want a really light area and you stain the holes, then you're kind of sunk. Okay, let's put a first layer of hair and then this can totally dry pretty quick. Ooh, I've got a nice soppy black going here. Now I don't want this hair to wind up just looking like a bunch of lines, but he does have dreadlocks, which, but I need to think about combining some of the shapes together so that it doesn't just look like he is striped. I always like to add other colors so that it just makes it look a little richer. I don't want to cover up all my blue though. And eventually I'm going to lose this edge of his face. So I think I may do that a little bit with this coat, just so that some of that gets lost right up into that face. Painting is such fun, I don't. And because the paint really just sits on the top, you can always go back and soften an edge. You don't have to worry about anything drying or any, because it's real easy to go back and do that. I can even, let's take a little bit out right in here, just to kind of make it look like there's a little bit of a roundness to that hat. And we can even take a little off of the button or whatever that is, just to give it a little form without actually even changing anything. And now I'm going to start over here, and I want to add some real dark to his hair and kind of bring that up into his face. So I'm going to mix some up here. You will notice when I'm painting, I don't reach back into my water near as often as a lot of painters do. I don't worry about getting some burnt sienna in my blue or some blue in my burnt sienna because I can clean that out later. If I keep rinsing my brush out, I'm adding way too much water for as thick and rich as I want this paint to be. So I don't, my water actually stays fairly clean sometimes just because I don't go back into that water bucket every time I get my brush in a different color. So let's add a little more dark in here, just to pump his hat up a little bit here. Some people were saying that you couldn't see the texture from in the back as well, which is very true, and it's a very good point, but it's one thing that I have to think about as an artist, I think all of us do, and that is a painting should look good from the back of the room as well as from the front of the room. So if you can't see the texture from the back of the room that well, then I better have pretty good values in this painting for it to work from back there. One of the nice things about a painting like this is that it can draw you in. You know, if it kind of catches your attention, it does make you want to get closer to it to see the texture. But hopefully the painting will work from back there as well as from up here. That's my goal anyway. I suppose that's all of our goals, but. So I'm just adding some into his hair here. Now I'm going to go and work on his skin right next to that hair. So I'm going to add some burnt sienna right here and let that run right in. I don't want to play too much in his eye area because, like I say, I want to kind of save that. Put some of his mustache in here. Let's see, I don't want to lose his nose. I could always lift a little of that out if I need to put highlights or something in it. It's a little hard for me to see my drawing. I know there's nose holes there somewhere. I know they're nostrils, but whenever when you're painting, you're using the other side of your brain, and when you're trying to talk too, sometimes you make up stuff. You know, those whole things there. Now there's kind of a light edge under his lip there. So I'm going to let that be there. But we're gonna start sculpting this face with some water. So I'm gonna soften this spot out. You really have to rinse your brush a lot because I've got a lot of color on here. So I'm picking up a lot of color as I soften. Soften his little eyelid there. Now I lost more of that white than I wanted, but I'll just wipe it back off. It's at this point that I really start feeling like I'm sculpting his face. And it's really fun.
Did you pre-wet your towel? Is that why you get to soften and you don't put your brush in the water?
No, these are dry, and I use diapers instead of paper towels because I felt like I personally was destroying the rainforest. And so I started using diapers instead of paper towels. And the neat thing about diapers is that they're made to wick water away. And so they literally will suck the water out of the brush and leave the paint.
Cool.
And and after you've used them for a while, they get to be this wonderful gray color. And what I do is I just use them until they're literally stiff, and then I wash a load of diapers, and I don't use fabric softener. And they have diapers at Target and at Sears. And you buy a dozen diapers and you've got painting rags. And I also, because I put fresh paint out there, that helps me too, because I've got nice gooey fresh paint there. But I'll go around his nose there. One thing about this gesso that I really like is it almost won't let you get too picky, because it's very difficult to do real tiny little details on this, so you just can't. And it really helps me to loosen up because it makes me loosen up. I think there's something very, I don't know if you want to call it relaxing or gratifying, knowing that if I mess this up. Yeah, Frank, I thought you were being a ventriloquist or something. And I'm sure Frank can attest to this, because I think the first really successful painting maybe that I ever had, I thought, well, I can never do that again. You know, that's the only really good painting I have in me. And you do find through years of painting that you do have more than one good painting in you. It's just takes practice.
How much is that watercolor board?
It comes. One of the other things I love about it is it comes in big sheets. The